To understand metabolic syndrome, we need to understand the origins of that. Even the term metabolic syndrome used to be called the insulin resistance syndrome. And I regret that we ever left that title. It's not that glucose itself isn't valuable, but it's that changes in glucose really ought to be viewed through the lens of insulin. And let's imagine an individual who's progressing from perfect metabolic health to metabolic disarray. And at the end of that would be type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes really represents the prototypical metabolic disease, which is itself a disease of profound insulin resistance. Now, to kind of take us there on that journey through time, we would have an individual coming into the clinic, and year over year, we would be measuring their glucose. And we may see year upon year that their glucose levels are normal every time. And yet other markers of disease are getting worse. Maybe they're gaining weight, their blood pressure is starting to climb. That is such a common one. Maybe they have some fertility issues. In women, that would be PCOS, and men, that would be erectile dysfunction. But throughout all of this, the physician starts to treat the person's infertility, or they start to treat their hypertension, but the glucose stays normal, and so they don't really pay that any regard. However, if we had been looking at insulin through this timeline, we would have seen that while glucose levels are staying normal, the insulin levels are going up. In fact, going up by potentially multiples, where by the time that 10 or 20 years later, when we finally see the glucose starting to change, insulin had changed multiples. It's maybe 4 or 5 times higher than it used to be. And if we shift the paradigm away from glucose to insulin, we not only detect the problem significantly sooner, indeed potentially decades, but we also treat the problem much, much better, because the prevailing glucose-centric paradigm is that in type 2 diabetes, we have high glucose, and we just need to do whatever we can to lower the glucose, including pushing the insulin up even higher than it was before. That works in lowering the glucose, but it reveals the problem in that when we lower the glucose, the more aggressively we're pushing up insulin to lower the glucose, the more we are literally killing these individuals. They get fatter and sicker and die more by trying to push down while pushing up the insulin. Again, the paradigm should be, this is a high insulin state, which is insulin resistance. We need to lower that, and then let the glucose take care of itself.